Welcome to the first of two screencasts looking at the research method section of the SY2 A Sociology exam. So the SY2 exam lasts for 1.5 hours and it's divided up into two sections. And it's section 1, the research method section, that we're going to be looking at in this particular screencast. And in total you should spend half an hour on this section of the SY2 exam, leaving a whole hour for the second section, which is the section which is on the mass media. So what you can see on the screen at the moment is the layout for the research method section of the SY2 exam. So this will be the first section of the exam paper, and we can see that they will give you a bit of text to read, and this text is usually a summary of a piece of sociological research that has made use of a particular method or research strategy. And then you get two questions. You get a 10-mark question and a 20-mark question. And in this particular screencast, we're going to focus on the 10-mark question. So the 10-mark question is going to ask you to explain the meaning of a key term from research methods. And that term is likely to refer to either a particular research method or a particular research design. And to get all of the marks, you need to try to make at least 4 key points. So you want to identify and describe 4 characteristics of the research method or research design that is mentioned in the question. When you're doing that, you need to make sure that you refer to the item, so that's the bit of text that they give you along with the 2 questions, and also ideally an example of your own. And you should be guided by time in terms of how much you write, so as much as you can write in 10 minutes, and depending on the size of your handwriting, that will mean that this answer is normally between about half a side to a full side of A4. So let's look at a couple of examples together. So firstly, let's imagine that the question asks you to explain the meaning of the term participant observation. So with this type of question, remember that you've got to make 4 key points, so you've got to describe 4 characteristics of this particular method. So you would need to start with a definition of participant observation. So remember, this is a form of sociological research in which the researcher takes a very active role in the social situation that they're observing. We could make a distinction between overt and covert participant observation. We could describe the type of data that this method produces. So it's a primary method that produces qualitative data. It's linked to ethnographic research designs. We could link this method to theory by explaining the link with interpretivism and Weber's concept of Verstehen. We could talk about the key strength of this particular method, which is often seen in terms of its validity. And also we would need to remember that we would need to link some of these key points to the item, and also an example of a study that you've learned as part of your revision. Let's now look at a real student answer written in the exam to another 10-mark question. So before we look at the exemplar, I want you to hit the pause button, read through the item carefully, because remember that your answer should refer to the item, and then read through this question carefully. And now hit the pause button and have a read through this real student answer to the question that you saw on the previous slide. And this is a reasonably good answer, so it gets 8 marks out of 10, it gets most of the marks. So it starts with a definition of the key term, although notice that they've got the spelling wrong here, they've misspelled the word qualitative. It identifies examples of some of the main methods that we would associate with qualitative research. There's explicit use of the item, and there's also use of key sociological terms. So for example, they talk about one of the problems of qualitative research being its lack of reliability. So 8 marks out of 10, it's a reasonably good answer. So for this question that we've just looked at, the examiners said that the best answers had a clear definition of the term qualitative data. They described the methods that we would associate with the production of qualitative data, so they correctly identified those methods that produce qualitative data. They referred to the item explicitly. They mentioned another study based on qualitative data that they had learned before going into the exam. They referred to the theoretical perspective interpretivism, and they developed a sentence or two describing the strengths or weaknesses of qualitative research.